My name is Naomi Choi. I was the senior strategic analyst on the growth architecture team at Rowan Caldwell and Company, a consulting firm that branded itself as progressive, inclusive, and performance-led. In reality, it was a holding pen for overqualified women and overpromoted mediocrity. And no one mastered that game better than Kara Meyer. Kara was my direct supervisor for 4 years. She liked to refer to me as her shadow, though I never volunteered for the title. I ran her numbers, cleaned her decks, caught her missed data joins, and made her sound more convincing than she was. She called it mentorship. I called it containment. The betrayal didn't surprise me. Not really, but the precision of it, the public casualness, that caught me off guard. It was a Thursday morning in Conference Room D, the one with the frosted glass, and the speakerphone no one knew how to mute. 7 people were in the room, 6 with voting power, 1 without. That was me. We were there to review departmental talent development, succession planning, read, promotions. My name came up on slide 12. Kara had written it herself. She controlled the entire deck. Naomi Choi. High performance, high retention, high client satisfaction. That was the title. Bullet points followed. Efficiency metrics, team stability, project turnaround times. It was my work, neatly condensed, color-coded, undeniable. The EVP of operations looked interested. This is solid. Has she been considered for vertical rotation? I turned slightly, careful not to show reaction. That's when Kara spoke. She's sharp, she said, but not exactly executive material. Yet. It wasn't even said with malice, just calm detachment, as if it had already been decided, as if she were apologizing on behalf of the universe, not herself. Then she pivoted. She thrives in tactical roles, great execution, great documentation, but leadership requires a certain polish, board comfort. She's not quite there. No one challenged her. The EVP nodded once. The CHRO jotted something down. The conversation moved forward. 12 seconds. That's how long it took to erase 4 years of contribution. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask for clarity. I didn't look surprised. I've found that silence in those moments is more frightening than protest. It makes them wonder what you already know. Because Kara assumed I'd be devastated, or worse, compliant. That I'd keep my head down, try again next quarter, or thank her for the feedback. She didn't know I had already moved. 2 days earlier, I'd had a private meeting with Halston Ventures, a mid-tier private equity firm looking to expand into consulting acquisitions. They weren't flashy. They were disciplined, quietly aggressive, and they had just opened a new advisory vertical focused on post-acquisition integration strategy, exactly the kind of work Kara always blocked me from doing. What they needed was someone who understood firms like Rowan Caldwell from the inside. I gave them a diagnostic, pain points, inefficiencies, process overlaps, political stagnation, all backed by real data I had built over the past 2 years. They asked how I had access to it. I told them the truth. No one in my department read dashboards unless I narrated them. They were already eyeing Rowan Caldwell as a soft acquisition target. I didn't need to pitch myself. I just confirmed their suspicions. On Wednesday, they sent the contract. On Thursday, Kara erased me in front of a room of men. That night, I signed the offer. Strategic Oversight Advisor. Portfolio Influence Quarter 2 onward. I didn't turn in my resignation. I didn't thank her for her time. I just opened the internal calendar I'd managed for 4 years and removed myself from her one-to-one list, effective immediately. The next time she needed a meeting with me, she'd have to request it through investor relations. I joined Rowan Caldwell fresh out of graduate school. No legacy contact, no internal referral, just a 42-page case study on fragmented supply chains and a spreadsheet that built itself when you fed it the right signals. They gave me the offer in 48 hours. Entry-level analyst, base salary slightly below market, no signing bonus, no guaranteed rotation. I took it anyway. I wasn't trying to climb the ladder. I was trying to build something that wouldn't collapse under its own jargon. My degree was in applied systems design, but my instinct had always been organizational. How things fall apart when no one notices the connections until they break. By year 2, I was the analyst they sent in when teams couldn't explain why something wasn't working. Revenue streams, vendor timing, market re-entry. I wasn't loud, but my models were. Quiet dashboards that turned chaos into patterns. My decks never needed voiceover. They explained themselves. Kara was my third manager. When she started, she invited me to coffee, told me she liked quiet thinkers with sharp output, said I reminded her of herself when she was coming up. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I do now. It meant she saw me as a tool. She started small, repackaged my market briefs into executive summaries, forwarded under her name. Then she began presenting my decks with team input and edited footnotes. I once watched her take a live Q&A with my research loaded on her screen, answering questions I had already solved, without acknowledgement. It didn't bother me at first. I told myself it was the cost of exposure, that one day I'd be in the room where people knew who wrote the material, even if they didn't say it out loud. But the room never came. I hit every benchmark, delivered every quarter, got flagged in internal reviews as a high-performing contributor with scalable potential. But when promotion season rolled around, my name was always a near miss. Just one more year of visibility. Leadership is watching. Kara's advocating for you. Just be patient. Kara always smiled, always supportive, always soft-spoken in front of me. But I saw the files. I ran the HR prep decks. I knew who was getting slotted where before the announcement emails went out. I knew who she was actually advocating for. And it wasn't me. She favored safe bets. People she could coach, control, shape. Mostly men with average outputs and superior confidence. Or women with the same tone she used. Pleasant, pliable, non-threatening. She once told me I was too precise to be diplomatic. She meant it as criticism. I took it as confirmation. Because what she needed wasn't accuracy. It was plausible deniability. She couldn't claim credit for people who wouldn't defer. And I had stopped deferring. I still answered questions, still cleaned up models, still flagged inconsistencies before they hit the wrong inbox. But I stopped pretending I didn't know what I was worth. And when Halston Ventures reached out for an informational interview, I didn't hesitate. They weren't looking for polish. They were looking for precision. I didn't ask for the meeting. I was already the meeting. When I left Rowan Caldwell, I didn't send a farewell email. There was no party, no cupcakes in the break room, no slideshow of quarterly wins I had built, but never been allowed to present. I didn't even tell Kara in person. I submitted my transition plan through HR, loaded every project file into a cleanly structured Drive folder, and left her calendar blank. I knew how much she hated blank space. The company gave me a 2-line exit statement. Naomi Choi has chosen to pursue opportunities elsewhere. We thank her for her contributions. It was accurate, sterile, forgettable, perfect. Because while Kara assumed I was starting over, I was already sitting across the table from the people who would eventually control her budget. My title at Halston Ventures was Strategic Oversight Associate. It didn't sound glamorous, but in practice, it meant I was embedded directly in the advisory pipeline, the ones who decide which companies get funded, acquired, or quietly removed from relevance. At first, I didn't mention Rowan Caldwell. There was no need. But I watched, closely, as their name came up during an internal review. Their profit margins were tightening. Client churn was up. Forecast accuracy had dropped 3 quarters in a row. I didn't have to ask for access. The firm already had a data feed.
What I saw confirmed everything I'd warned about in private models. Kara never passed upward. Departmental bloat masked by cross charges, client retention disguised through bundled renewals, mid-level leadership claiming credit for project scopes that never closed. Holston wasn't planning a hostile takeover. That wasn't their style. They preferred a soft entry, a capital partnership in exchange for oversight. What companies call governance support in press releases, but internally means one thing: we watch your decisions now. I offered to lead the preliminary review. No one objected. My resume didn't need justification anymore. I had the numbers, the references, the credibility Kara once spent years muting. So I built the initial evaluation with the same clarity I always used. No emotion, just red flags, friction points, and loss exposure. And in doing so, I constructed something else. A bridge back into the company that once deemed me unworthy of leadership. But now I wouldn't be walking through the front door. I'd be watching from above. Rowan Caldwell didn't need to be taken down. They needed to be recalibrated, gently, firmly, with capital strings and quiet hands. And I had both. Halston moved slowly. We never announced intent until we were certain. That's what made the model work. By the time the target realized we were in control, the levers had already shifted. For Rowan Caldwell, I started with internal benchmarks. Publicly, they were still riding on 3 legacy client wins from 2 years ago. Internally, their operational metrics told a different story. Overextended resource burn, lagging onboarding cycles, and a sudden spike in vendor renegotiations that looked more like deferred payments. Kara had always been good at selling a narrative. What she couldn't control was the data trail. I flagged her department first. Soft anomalies, recurring variances between forecast and fulfillment, a 4-quarter stretch where project completions had been padded through co-crediting. Sloppy but common. Most firms try it once. Then I looked deeper. Employee churn. Her team had lost 3 key contributors in under a year. One exit was listed as performance-related. I knew her name. She had trained half the team. I pulled the exit interview. Unable to secure vertical alignment despite consistent delivery. That was the phrase used. Kara had silenced someone else before me. That gave me context. What I needed next was leverage. Holston didn't buy companies outright. We bought influence, usually through a strategic capital injection that gave us board observation rights, followed by incremental policy control through advisory performance thresholds. I designed the plan myself. Phase 1, $12 million in funding for tech infrastructure modernization, contingent on improved margin forecasting and a revised leadership review cadence. Phase 2, governance advisory installed at board level, strategic advisors embedded in quarterly planning. Phase 3, discretionary control over executive reassignments for underperforming verticals. That clause was buried in the language, coded like every other performance escalation trigger. No one outside legal would flag it unless they were looking. I made sure Kara wouldn't be looking. She still thought she was the narrative. What she didn't realize was this wasn't a story. It was a case study in structural transfer. I built the architecture, embedded the thresholds, routed every condition through performance logic I had written, and waited. 2 weeks later, the offer went out. Not a buyout, not a takeover, just a letter of intent, capital support, governance partnership, strategic integration assistance. It was everything Kara had once called me too junior to understand. And now, she was signing the bottom of a document whose escalation protocol reported to me. Kara didn't recognize me at first, not because I looked different. I hadn't changed much. Same neutral blazer, same black notebook, same unassuming posture. But the room was different. The placement. I was seated at the far end of the board table, laptop open, screen angled away from everyone. Beside me sat a partner from Holston Ventures and 2 quiet observers. Legal, risk. Kara entered late, not unusual for her. She liked to walk into rooms after the introductions were done. It made her seem busy, in demand. She glanced at the open seats, spotted a nameplate with hers and sat down. The meeting was labelled Q2 Oversight Session, Capital Strategy Integration. She assumed she was here to present her department's expansion roadmap, the same one she had recycled through 3 quarters. A slide deck with vague transformation buzzwords and padded growth metrics. She began speaking before anyone asked. Thank you all for your time. I'd like to walk you through the projected uplift from our pilot phase initiatives and the projected client acquisition based on current funnel. I didn't speak. I just clicked once. The monitor behind her flashed. Strategic Review, Forecast Validation Report. Prepared by Naomi Choi, Da Holston Ventures. Kara's voice hitched for a fraction of a second. She turned, then turned back, her smile already stiffening. Naomi, she said too brightly, it's been a while. I didn't return the greeting. The partner next to me leaned forward. We've reviewed your materials, Kara. Naomi's team has compiled the comparative forecast alignment and variance report. We'll be using that to assess your budget approvals going forward. Kara blinked. My budget approvals? The partner nodded once. This review isn't evaluative, he said. It's structural. Post-capital governance applies to all verticals with strategic debt risk ratios exceeding threshold as defined by internal variance analysis. She didn't know what that meant. She didn't need to. I did. It meant, we control your numbers now. She looked at me again. Her eyes scanned the table, recalculating, trying to locate a lifeline, but no one looked back. They were reading from the report I wrote. Not the deck she brought. She began speaking again. Something about realignment flexibility. Something about phase timelines. I didn't interrupt. I just waited. When the partner finished the session, he asked me the final question. Naomi, based on the strategic material variance and the unfulfilled performance clauses, what's your recommendation on Q3 release? I didn't hesitate. At this time, I said, I do not recommend unlocking further funds under the current leadership assumptions. Silence. Kara didn't flinch, but her hands tightened slightly on the conference folder in front of her. She didn't argue. She didn't look away. Because she knew. She once told me I wasn't executive material. Now she couldn't execute anything without my sign-off. And she finally understood what that meant. They didn't fire Kara. People like Kara don't get fired. They get redirected. Quietly, bureaucratically, in ways that protect brand equity and preserve the illusion of choice. The memo went out on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 paragraphs, no emotion, the kind of HR language that's been scrubbed to a shine. Effective immediately, Cara Meyer will assume an advisory role focused on cross-functional alignment initiatives as part of Rowan Caldwell's strategic transformation effort. We thank her for her continued partnership. There were no meetings to explain it, no follow-up Q&A. Her name was removed from the Q3 Capital Roadmap within 48 hours. I was CC'd on the new draft. Her Slack bio stayed the same, but her email signature changed. No more SVP Strategic Development, just Advisor Org Transform, a non-title for a non-role, the kind of designation that signals influence without actual decision rights. In her calendar, the change was even more obvious. No recurring check-ins, no capital review syncs, no cross-departmental leadership calls. The executive ops channel no longer pinged her for feedback. Her invites stopped updating. No one asked why. They simply stopped including her. She tried to stay active, left comments in slide drafts she hadn't been assigned, replied to threads she no longer had access to. I noticed she added a line to her bio in the company directory. Focused on unlocking organizational potential through systems awareness and inclusive insight frameworks. A beautiful sentence, completely meaningless. The first time I saw it, I didn't react. I didn't delete it. I didn't edit the directory. I just let it sit. Because by then, I didn't need to prove anything. The firm had already adjusted. The board now routed performance reviews through Holston's advisory team, which meant me. Budgets over $500,000 required my signature. Strategic hiring proposals crossed my desk first. I reviewed multi-year client acquisition strategies, rewrote risk frameworks, and had quarterly meetings with the partner Cara once tried to get coffee with for 9 straight months. I didn't take her seat. I bypassed it. Cara used to define the ceiling. Now she wasn't even in the room where the next floor was being planned, and no one rushed to fix that. The internal ecosystem shifted fast. People adapted. Project leads reclassified their reporting chains. New team members introduced themselves to me in kickoff meetings. Not Cara. Her name faded from retrospectives. Clients stopped asking for her. One junior PM called her legacy. The word hung for a second, then passed. I didn't correct him, because legacy is just a polite way to name something no longer in circulation. Every few weeks, she tried to reinsert herself, dropped notes into strategy outlines, tagged herself in Jira tickets, left placeholder slides in pitch decks. Not disruptive, just present. But presence wasn't power anymore. The last time she requested a one-to-one with me, it came through shared scheduling, not directly. A placeholder block, unconfirmed.
The subject line simply read, "Would appreciate your perspective." I declined, not rudely, just firmly. Because the difference between rejection and irrelevance is that one makes a sound, and the other doesn't. I never changed my LinkedIn headline. Still said strategic oversight, advisory, no adjectives, no inflated leadership tags, no former analyst turned investor, no story arc, just the facts. Titles didn't matter anymore. People knew where things flowed now. They knew who reviewed the roadmaps, who signed off on capital cycles, who asked the questions that made meetings shorter and results sharper. And they didn't need it to be on a banner. I still wore the same watch Cara once called too utilitarian for executive optics, still carried a plain black moleskin, still walked into meetings 5 minutes early and left without small talk. But now, when I asked for a revised forecast model, someone rebuilt it in under an hour. When I flagged a flaw in a renewal pipeline, no one pushed back. They rewrote the slide. Respect arrived without announcement, because influence didn't enter through the door. It bled in through architecture. Quiet, total, absolute. One morning, a message pinged my inbox. From Kara. Her name looked smaller now. No prefix. Just a lowercase presence, tucked into a new folder labeled Legacy Accounts. Subject line: Budget restructure request. Strategic input needed. The request was clean, professional, brief. She had filled out the pre-approval form, tagged the appropriate line items, and linked supporting documents. No attachments missing, no errors. At the bottom, just one sentence. If you'd be willing to advise, I'd value your perspective. I stared at it for a moment. Not long. Then I clicked reply. Please attach your updated assumptions and send by end of week. I'll review during Friday approvals. No punctuation flourishes, no warmth, just alignment. I hit send and archived the thread. Then I poured another cup of tea and opened my whiteboard. Erased an old metric Kara once claimed couldn't be reached and replaced it with a single word: standard. That's what my work had become. Not exceptional, just expected. Sometimes people ask how it feels, coming back above the people who tried to keep you below. Whether there's satisfaction in watching them walk in with their folders and lowered eyes. I never answer directly, because the truth is quieter than that. It's in the stillness of knowing you don't need revenge headlines, or confessionals, or vindication arcs. Just a system that now answers to you. I don't need applause. I don't need an audience. My name is Naomi Choi. And the woman who said I wasn't executive material now waits for my approval.